So welcome back to the Raised Hunting Podcast, and we're going to officially start because T-Zoro 535, I think is the number, is giving us a topic that we almost talked about in our last podcast, but we decided not to. We said we were going to hold it and do it of its own. But there's more too, and was the exact comment, do we believe 8-point bucks are always 8-point bucks?
Or have evidence.
But was there any more to that question?
I don't think so.
That was basically it?
Let me pull it up for the fourth time.
Okay. He's going to pull it up for the fourth time to make sure we get this right, because we can start, though, right there. I don't mind going first and answering this question and saying.
Well, make sure you tell everybody to keep leaving the reviews. Also, just hold on. He said, wondering what our thoughts or evidence was on 8s always being 8s, other than an injury causing abnormal antler growth or a random kicker point. I've been told a mainframe 8 will never grow to a mainframe 10, and just wonder if that's really the case. Thanks again for the podcast and useful information.
All right, we're going to give you some more useful information.
But leave those reviews.
Leave where reviews.
This topic came from.
The Apple guys are still winning.
No, the Spotify people are winning.
They are. Apple's trying to catch up.
That's what we've been saying for the last 7 weeks.
Okay, well, it's Spotify, not Shopify. So,
Lord.
Just the fact that I'm keeping those two separate, I don't know what to tell you. Like I told you guys yesterday, in the last podcast, put in your application because
this is where the retention rate goes.
Enough.
Yeah.
You got your feet up on the table.
Yeah, and I have guess what? People comment on it, and obviously they're watching then. So, anyways,
nobody wants to see your feet or your food.
David, would you, for once in your life, you're becoming as bad as him? I think you need to get pills too to stay focused.
What have I done?
All right, I have a theory.
Sit here and be innocent.
Okay, go. I don't have a theory actually. I didn't think I had a deer. I do have a deer that I could prove this with now.
Oh boy.
Answer being no.
He's a forkador.
Do 8s stay? That's does not even pertain to the question because we're talking about 8s. So, 8s don't stay 8s forever. Some of them might, but
mainframe.
Mainframe 8 doesn't mean that it's always going to be a mainframe 8. No.
Okay, what deer are you thinking of that debunks that?
I had my dumb little freaking annoying white 8 the year before.
I don't think
he's been an 8 for 2 years straight.
That's very harsh to that
he's
deer.
He's a really annoying deer.
You're going to give him a complex.
He's Joey's next buck.
Annoying deer.
I think you should call him David.
I agree. So David, that deer, I've known him for 3 years.
Do you think you guys
he was an 8 for the first
me?
2 years that I've known him, and last year he was a 9.
Ooh.
How long was the G4? Like an inch?
It was a classified point. That's
what he said is a mainframe 8. Was it a kicker or was it a 9?
No, it was another point.
Okay, so he grew a G4.
He flat out grew a G4. Actually, if we're going to get really technical.
He's saying 10?
No, that would still be a mainframe 8.
Because it's
an unmatched point.
Okay,
I guess.
Well, I want to weigh in because I have valid evidence.
Okay.
And you'll know when I say it, oh yeah. And that is 8s don't always stay 8s. They can become something else.
Without an injury.
Without an injury. And the perfect example would be the wide 8 that became the wide 10 the next year. And his G4s were 5 to 6 inches long, and he was a 160-some inch deer.
That is a good one.
And he went perfectly from an 8 to a 10.
That is a good
and
one.
we have tons of trail camera. We have tons of trail camera pictures of him. And the other one would
be, it is absolutely undoubtedly the same deer. And we have his sheds, and we could show you. We could look at his sheds, and they are smooth as a baby's butt.
And the next year he's got 2 G4s.
Yeah, and they're legitimate G4s,
but I have
like
another
5-6 inches. Okay,
is the big 8. The big 8 the next year was an 11 with 2 G4s and a kicker.
That's true.
Oh, but minus the kicker because it doesn't count. So he's a 10.
Yeah, but he went from an 8 to a 10.
So
sorry.
I think it'd be a lot easier for Nick to just sit there with a beep button, and whenever he feels it come, because otherwise.
We
keep asking ourselves, why is
it fit too well?
I don't know what it is. It's half the comments that you guys make.
Thank you, Nick approves.
Over my head.
Honestly, though, no, like that. You just made 2 very good points.
I have a question about one too.
Well, we need to call Shane.
What about Juice? He switched up quite a few times, didn't he?
No, he always stayed a mainframe 8 though.
I thought he was an 8 when me and Dad saw him. Then he had 1 year where he had all sorts of crap.
No. Did you have the Big 8 aged?
I think you did. We did. 6.
Okay. Interesting. Because I would have thought I'd answer.
This is very interesting. I agree.
I was trying to think of a deer that which is weird for me because usually I have no problem thinking of these things. But I was trying to think of one that was an 8 that went to a mainframe 10. And the wide 8 is a perfect example, and the Big 8's a perfect example. So is what that would say, and I'm going to call Shane and let him know, hey, you might want to rethink your management practices. Because I know
he
a lot
eights?
of – oh, yeah. Shoots crap out of them. That's why actually Nick shot –
a 9, wasn't it?
Was he a 9?
No, it was an 8.
Yeah, Nick shot like a 1-year-old 120-some inch 9 that was probably going to be 200 at some point. And it's okay, Nick. It's all right. It's okay.
He doesn't care. It's his first deer. Keep shooting,
I just
Nick.
had to rub it in for him a little bit.
Shane told him shoot.
But Shane was telling me that he just whacking 8s because he wants to get rid of all the 8s. And I know a lot of people that believe that same thing.
Oh, yeah.
My first question would be, first of all, just why? Because now, like, if they're one, I think where this whole thing is going to go here is the deer management, right? That you're shooting what we call bucks, right? Bleep. Yep, beep it out, Nick. Anyway,
a management deer. You're shooting
a management deer.
Management deer.
But they're the ones that you see them on the camera, and you're like, oh, that shit buck. Because they're always there.
Bleep.
And so I don't ever call them that, too, because if you have a really picky significant other like I do, they won't shoot it because you called it a beep buck.
Well, we also don't put very much weight behind that. It's not like we...
Some of them, though, are cool deer.
Yeah, a lot of
good
them,
deer. They
a lot
just
of them
aren't
we'd actually
necessarily
still
high-scoring
shoot.
deer.
It's just a lot easier way to classify, okay, this one's an up-and-comer, this one's not.
Yeah, I think when we classify a deer that's not like we would say you could have 140-some inch 8, maybe 150-inch 8 that all of us would shoot. But we would still call him a buck because if he's 6 or something like that, because we know he's never going to probably be anything more than that. But my question would be, is a deer that's, say, 3 years old, and he's an 8, and he's got pretty good tines, pretty good eye guards, decent mass, why would you shoot that deer? Because look at Juice.
Oh, yeah, Juice. But
he's a 180-inch deer.
Right, but he also I feel like he had the potential from day one. We were a year off on his age every year because we thought he was younger than he was. Yeah,
but I mean, how do you know? Like, how would you ever know that when
you don't.
Looking at these deer at 2 or 3?
This is a really, maybe somebody that is listening is going to asking this question themselves, but I think this might be a dumb question. But so if you think it's a dumb question, I'm going to be the dumb one to ask it. If you take this theory, though, and the first rack a deer grows is not it could be a forked horn, it could have a deer, it could be a deer that's incredibly big and has 5 points on each side if somehow he magically grew his first rack. But that first rack never determines what he's going to be the following year.
I don't think it even does second or third
No, that's
year.
what I'm saying is the second year he may still not even have all the tines that he's probably going to have at his full potential. So how could you – is that just a dumb question to ask because, okay, well, they're so young, obviously they got a lot of growing to do, or is that a valid other side to the argument, I guess?
I think that it's up to the hunter or the manager's perspective on what you decide you want to manage and what you don't. But I think classifying point-wise is not a way to go.
Well, I'm not talking about class. I'm talking about the fact of do 8s stay 8s forever?
We've confirmed that that's not the case.
Okay, I was just going on the fact that some people aren't going to be convinced by year 2 deer.
Okay.
So that's, yeah.
But I guess my point is I kind of felt like that was the case before these incidents, before I started picking.
I never have.
I did. There was a time in my life where I was like, okay, he's an 8-point buck. He's probably going to be an 8-point buck. But at the same time, I think as you see 8-point bucks that look like there's no way of absolutely knowing. I've said it before. It's impossible to age every deer, especially if you don't have some history with them. But when you look at a deer and you think you're looking at a 5-year-old deer and he's an 8-point buck, I would have said the chances of him ever changing now was not good. And I would have been wrong because we do know the age of the wide 8 was 4. And so from 3 to 4, he added his G4s. And we know that the age that the big 8 became a 10 was from 5 to 6.
That's what I was going to say. Before you brought those two deer up, I was going to say that I feel like 3-year-olds, a 3-year-old 8 could turn into a 10. But if they're like 4 or 5, the chances of them going from a mainframe 8 to a mainframe 10 is not going to happen. But now I would still say that I think that's slim. But obviously the big 8 is a great case, which we get that comment all the time. The deer's an 11. Yes, we're aware. When we knew the deer, he was a
8, straight 8.
But he was mature and went to an 11, and he, without that one inside kicker, he'd be a mainframe 10. But I just don't understand why everybody wants to shoot 8s. Like, why 8s have such a stigma around them of being crap deer, because some of them turn into freaking tanks. Like 160-inch 8, 150-60-inch 8 is flipping huge. And I'd rather, like, that's what the one I need now is I need a big 8. The next question I have, though, is, so when you really think about some of these deer, I'm trying to think of how many deer have we looked at that were 2 or 3-year-olds and we're like, that deer is going to be a tanker. And then they don't do anything. And then how many have we looked at that have been like, you weren't even on the radar and they freaking blow up?
Well, I think our biggest issue.
We had one this year already that you thought was going to be much like blow up, and I thought, just from the amount of times I'd seen him, thought that he was a little older. And I was like, no, I feel like he's not going to do a whole heck of a lot.
Who?
Gypsy, and he's freaking blown up.
Oh yeah,
blown up.
Saying that I thought he was going to.
You thought that he was going to blow up last year, saying last year from this year.
Yeah. And
I was saying that I was, nah, I don't think that deer has it. Like, I don't think he's going to do much. And this year we've got him again, and he's put on like 30 inches from last year.
And I think that what ends up happening in the case that the ones that I know of, when they blow up at 2, they get killed because we don't have big enough farms to keep them on there, and then they are big enough that someone sees them and they shoot them. I mean, the ones I would use as a chunky monkey
meaning
was
that they're
number
willing
1.
to run around a lot more as opposed to a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old.
Or where 2 and 3-year-olds. To me, that
nomad.
You're 2 and 3-year-old. Oh,
was he 4 or 3?
3.
And then the 9.
Yeah.
The 9 was 148-inch deer, I think is what we scored. We had both sheds from him, and he was 148 at 2 years old. And someone killed him the next year at, what'd you score? You scored him the other day just under 160.
How did we end up with him?
I found him dead.
157.
I found him 2 years later.
I'm going to go ahead and go with 4 inches short on both of the deer I scored, though, and I do not know how I did it. We previously scored the one out of my room was 160. I thought it was 163.
Did you forget a measurement?
It was
no, me and him are all. I've learned from him, and every time we went and scored all the deer in our house because I wanted to write down the actual measurements of each thing, and I was within an eighth of everything that he had. And so then when I went and measured that, I have no idea because I know he was over 160, and I got him at 158.
I know he was too because I remember thinking he only had like 21-inch beams.
Yeah.
He was 160 with 21-inch beams.
Yeah. I can't. I mean, his mass is absurd, but
Okay, you're off the. You guys
probably
are off the
baselines.
Anyways, yes, I measured him at 157.
Okay,
well, how many though have we been wrong on that we were like that one's gonna blow up and he didn't do anything? I can think of a few, but like I can think of the baby giant. I would have never told you that deer was gonna do what he did.
Right.
Yeah.
That deer sure, I'd have looked at it and been like, yeah, that deer could do something. Not 60 inches.
Right. Who knows what he's going to do this year?
Which, for everybody listening, he was 80 inches last year, or the year before, so he was only like 140-inch deer.
It's okay. He's just a deer.
Throwing him off our trail.
I knew it. Okay. Goodness.
I can think so there was that same place where Baby Giant was. There was a 10 that you found. I think you found the one side, and then I found the other side. That we were confident was going to be a tank. Mm-hmm. And he was like probably 145 at 3 or something like that, and just had everything. Great tine length, great eye guards, good mass, and he's pretty much done nothing.
Stumped out. He's like 150 maybe last year.
Yep.
Might have grown 5 inches. Well, the deer you killed 2 years ago.
Yo, remind me to look at a deer at the farm we just checked.
Okay.
Because I think it might be one of my deer.
Okay, so my point is that.
Joubert.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
Okay, so my point is that the deer you killed 2 years ago,
deer,
the year before that was right within 2-3 inches of what he ended up being, and we figured he was 4 or 5 years old, and so he still should have the potential to grow. And he put on like 2 inches, 3 inches.
Yeah. But then, on the other hand, you have Ralph, who was probably 170 at 4. 170 at 5. Maybe he was a little bigger because he was a tough deer to judge. And then, was it 6 that he find, or was there one more year in there that he was still like the same thing?
No, it was 2 in a row, I think.
I think at 5 he was probably pushing the 180 mark. I think he had grown. We just didn't really.
Well, if you remember right, when me and Dad first saw him, he was 170, but he looked 150
because we found his sheds.
He looked like he was 150 because his freaking body was so big.
Yeah.
Yeah. What year was that you? 17. That was 16? You sure?
No, 16 is when I killed that deer early season. I think it was 15. It wasn't 17. That's when I killed
16.
Touch.
I think it was 16. Okay.
No, I don't. Dude, 16 was when I killed the October 8th.
Okay, so it was 17?
I don't think so. I think it was 15. But anyways, what's your...
No way. That was the first year we hunted there.
Yeah, it wasn't that year.
Oh, then it had to have been 17 because it can't be 16. I was done. That was the earliest I was ever done. And I was freezing my butt off. That was a McDonald's run.
Okay.
I have to go look at footage when you guys started asking about that many years ago.
Because that was also Bullwinkle's biggest year.
17.
Yep.
Yeah. Why you should be able to know this.
That's what I'm doing is I'm noting it so that I know in my head which years.
I'm saying relating to Bullwinkle.
That's what I'm doing. So 17 he was 170. 18 I think he was about the same. That's when he added just a little G5s.
Right.
And then all of a sudden in 19 when we're assuming that he was 6, he exploded, like added 20 some inches or so. Huge, probably 8-9 inch flyer off of his G2. Split his G3s and added G5s on both sides and split his eye guards. Like just friggin' blew up. Like I really do believe the deer was over 200. Don't know what he had. We had one more year with him. I think he'd gone downhill. Was probably in the 180s, maybe 190. Probably 190 because our neighbor found one of the sheds and it was 80. It was either 89 or 85. I think it was 89. And then
big deer.
And then after that, he's been gone for 4 or 5 years.
Did you kill Dragon the same year?
That you killed.
You guys are way off topic here.
I don't know.
Well, I just saw that Dragon is 2017, and I didn't think that it was the same year that he's talking about.
Is what I'm getting to at least. That I think we've answered in our opinion. I would not be calling 8s, at least not till they're 5. What?
That didn't sound like you said calling 8s. It sounded like you said I wouldn't be calling AIDS.
Calling AIDS? What?
You should be calling that, but
that's why I was laughing because I think you should be doing that too. But anyways,
let's
add to the 8-point question. Though.
I don't think that's where I'm going. It's like, I think that we would all agree here that shooting 2, 3, and probably 4-year-old 8 points is not a good idea. Do you agree?
Possibly. No, I don't agree 100%.
Okay.
Dad's also the one that sees
just
a
make me
2-year-old that has no eye guards.
Shoot!
No eye guards.
This is the reason is because swoops.
Yeah, he's huge.
Swoops. He doesn't want to admit it, and so he can't agree to that.
Big.
Swoops is exactly what I thought he was gonna be. He is maxed out at like 145.
Are you kidding me? He was over 150 last year.
No, he wasn't.
Yes, he was. My BS meter is off.
Whatever.
We need waiters.
He's junk.
Yeah.
No, he's not.
He's been junk the whole time.
Okay. Anyways, Dad cannot admit he was wrong on this deer because he was saying that this deer was not going to be anything. He would never do anything, and
he hasn't.
And the deer is a very good deer now. Probably mid-50s to 160 last year. His beams were like 26 or something like that, and he just thought he looked weird at 2 because he had 21-inch beams at 2. So you're wrong on that one. But anyways, we'll move forward.
I agree. I'm not backing you up on this one.
He's totally wrong.
I will just make my statement then that I don't believe that you should be shooting an 8-point unless he's I don't believe you should be shooting any 8 at 2 or 3 just because he's an 8. At 4, if he's a total junk deer, like total junk deer, crappy eye guards, no mass, whatever, sure, shoot him. I would tell you to do the same thing with a 10 too. But a good 4-year-old 8, I would tell you not to shoot that one either. I would tell you honestly that calling any deer is going to be very difficult because I don't believe you should be doing that until they're 4 at the youngest. And the problem that throws such a huge wrench in that is I think that 80% of us are off on what we think the ages of these deer are. And so you might be shooting one that is actually 3 or 2.
Add a year or two if you think it's whatever you think it is. Add a year
that's his
or two.
opinion. So he can have his
Unless
opinion.
you have history.
But,
that's my opinion. That's all it is.
I do think that you can shoot some 8s, some 10s. I mean, you get deer
Except for
that
swoops.
You can.
Shot that one.
We should have already shot swoops.
Well, you also said that you would have shot that you tried to get him to shoot juice. So
right,
I
admit I'm wrong there.
Because he's 180, and that's why you're.
The other one he tried to get me to shoot.
What?
Chunky Monkey.
Oh, I know.
I didn't try to get you to shoot. I told you, you could shoot. Yeah.
Chunky Monkey was a 2-year-old that was probably in the mid-40s. And the only reason we know that is because he walked underneath Dad and I at 1 year old, and he was a full 10 and had like 16 inches of mass. He had like these 9-inch main beams and just this unbelievable mass.
We have a great video of it.
Yeah, and Dad's like, that deer's freaking Chunky Monkey. And I was like, yeah, he is. And so we named him Chunky Monkey. And so then at 2 years old, it was really easy to identify him because it was this little tiny deer with this just stupid, insane mass.
He looked really good under my stand.
Yeah, and Easton and Dad asked me, like, hey, is there any deer that you think we should definitely pass? I was like, just Chunky Monkey.
And Cage. You said don't shoot Cage. Because
Chunky
Cage
Monkey
was licking our stand.
I was like, Chunky Monkey or Cage? But I was like, if there's one really not to shoot, like Chunky Monkey, don't shoot that deer. And then they come back later and they're like, we almost killed a really good deer. And I look at the video, I'm like, that's flippin' Chunky Monkey.
And then Cage is sitting right there, and we didn't even consider shooting Cage.
We knew the difference. Oops. So, but well, here's the question that I would like. I wish someone could answer because I don't know the answer to this because I don't believe it. I think it's very difficult to tell the difference, and that is spikes is the other combination or the other argument that comes up all the time. Should you shoot spikes? And
no way.
I mean, and my point is
that's an argument.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of people that think if they come out and they're a spike the first year, they're not going to be much. Now there's been some studies I have read some myself.
Dr. Deere did one on that
and said that that's not the case. That it can just be that they were born early. Just a couple different things. Did your dog fart?
Oh,
is that
so bad? Holy cow! That is the worst one I've ever smelled.
Oh my Lord! What did he eat?
Cristo.
Oh my! I think he might.
I think it might be seeping out.
You need to look.
Oh, that reeks.
Oh my God!
It's not going anywhere,
dude. My eyes are watering.
How are you okay?
Because I can't smell it.
Because he's got the same level of freaking
fartness.
Yeah.
You can that sucker up and send that to Iraq.
What the heck? That's over. That would not be illegal.
that would be breaking the Geneva Convention.
So this is a little rocket man.
So anyhow,
it's good. We're good. I think. It's still lingering a little bit.
You're just gonna sniff and make sure. That's disgusting.
That was terrible.
I think that hit the top of my cranium.
It's not hard to get there. There's nothing to go through.
Oh, well, it filled it up then, too. It was coming back out my eyeballs. That's why they were watering.
All right, well, like I said, so there's the few comments on spikes. Is that I do think they've done some studies that say that you should not shoot spike bucks because you think that they're going to be always inferior, smaller deer, that they can bounce back, can be just...
Bounce back? They haven't even start to bounce up.
Well, that's what I'm talking about.
They're still trying to figure out how to bounce.
Freaking still got milk on their lips.
Yeah. So, but rarely do
you... got off the tit. Of course he's not going to be anything yet.
Rarely do you get a buck that's 1 year old that you can go, oh, my gosh, Chunky Monkey. I mean, those kind of deer are rare.
Yeah.
That you see just a massive deer already. The other one, he was 2, was 8-ball.
Oh, yeah.
He had all the makings to be a giant deer, and, again, he got killed.
How many of those, though? So how many 8-balls, how many of those types of deer? God.
How many 8 balls?
Okay, why did you name him 8
never
ball?
done
He had
an
8
8 ball.
points on one side.
That's
He had
it.
That was it. He had 8 points on one side. At 2 years old, dude.
I think the next scent we come out
Do you know what
with,
an 8 ball is?
we should name
I
it
do
8
know
ball.
what an 8 ball is. And it
You
had
think
nothing
he
to do with
doesn't know what an
drugs.
8 ball is?
Well, why would you name a deer that?
Because it's also just a ball
You give
in
me
a game.
crap for what I call Jubert.
Okay, can we get back?
That's a little worse. But what else? Because I do.
You need the Lord.
What are you doing?
How many of
He
these?
crapped his pants again.
How
Where
many?
Are you going?
Away from it, and he's stuck on my cord.
12 inches is going to help you?
Oh, it smelled over here.
It's the first time you've encountered 12 inches.
This is awful.
We're not even going to be able to use this podcast.
There's a good chance he's going to be in there for hours.
I can't believe I still have my train of thought, but I do.
And that pill's kicking in.
How many of these deer have we had that, like, if we try to throw a percentage on it, like an 8 ball, that we thought was going to be a giant, and then they don't do that much?
I thought we've already been over this.
Yeah, but I'm
we
just
were
saying
trying
as
to
a
answer it before
percent.
you got off on your goofy tangent.
Yeah, idiot.
I would say, I'm telling you that in my opinion, like 75% of them or 80% of them get killed. So we never know. And when I say
Well,
get
of the
killed,
ones that we do know, Cage did exactly
He
what we
was-
thought he
yes,
was going to do.
So did KB. I knew
Yeah,
KB
KB
had a lot of potential, but he was lacking the mass, which hurt him for a lot of his years.
Yep. Blade was already huge, though, really, from the first year that we knew him.
Yeah.
Mongo,
But
huge, same thing.
Blade didn't grow like we expected. We were hoping that
he
he
was
would
going to do 15,
do a lot more.
Yeah.
And he didn't do a lot more.
The Goofy 8, didn't he?
He grew.
I'm trying to remember even what he looked like the year before.
He looked like the younger one version now.
Yeah, he grew a lot.
He
in 1
did.
year. Yeah. So honestly, most of them that we've
Thought
thought were going to do something have
Did
done
something.
that. Yeah.
the OE10,
Well, he
the
kinda
OE10
stalled out, though.
Stalled out. He stayed right
he
where
ended
he
up
was
way
at.
smaller than we even
He-
thought he was.
That deer would have been the most. Except we did have an
Ground
inclination that he
shrinkage
was.
deer.
Yeah, he's the biggest looking small deer
He's
I've ever
not
seen.
small.
He's not
Can't
small.
call 160-inch deer
Yeah,
small.
but when you guess
He was
20 inches off,
154.
Oh, I thought he ended up right at 160. Right?
No.
158, 154.
yeah,
he-
low 150s.
Yeah, he like barely broke, which is not a small deer. Let's clear that up. It's not a small deer, but the deer looks like he could be 165, 170.
And we genuinely thought he was. That was probably
No, I was pretty sure.
I didn't
Dad
think
and I were
I didn't
pretty
think he
sure.
would make 170.
He had
I
no
thought he was.
beams.
I
He had
never really
no-
hunted him, but every
Right.
time they showed me pictures of him, I thought that deer was freaking huge.
Well, that's where he'd have really fooled you if you didn't do the numbers on him.
Oh, I
'Cause-
didn't do any.
the kicker was his G2s. His G2s looked like they were 14, and I bet you they were only a foot, which is still big, but they looked like they were 14 inches long. So then when you start comparing G3 and brow tines, you're like, oh my gosh, he's got to be.
It starts adding up a lot
right.
quicker.
Yep.
What about the flip side of when they get older, and they start when they go
Deteriorating?
downhill? Because we've seen, or I can think of a couple, but I know as a whole we've all seen multiple deer that'll go from a 10 or a 12 to either something really funky as they get really old, or start losing tines. They'll lose their tines and maybe put on a little mass, or maybe neither.
KB's, in my opinion, the perfect example of
Yeah,
just
he
watching him go up the ladder and starting
he didn't
down the
lose
ladder.
tines though, did he?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
he
he
lost
did?
He lost a 9-inch tine the last year.
Not from being broken.
No, just
Just
wasn't
flat
there.
out oh,
This
see, I thought he stayed
the
like
year-
a 12 or whatever the heck he was.
No, when we killed him this year, he was down 3 or 4 points.
Yeah,
Yeah, I just thought he was down 3 or 4 points because he broke off half his main beam again.
Mm-mm.
Oh,
No, he was pretty much a typical 14 at one point.
oh wow, that'll
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah, I think
but
the thing
that's
that we
interesting
don't
to
realize
me.
when they get older, like 5 to 6 and 6 to maybe 7, is even 4 to 5 is from 4 to 5. They don't usually look that much bigger, but they added a little mass and they added one kicker here or whatever, and it ends up being 10 inches.
Yeah,
And then you see them from 4 to 6, and it's like, I think a lot
You
of
mean
them.
5
the
to
majority
6?
of them. No, 4 to 6. You may look at him at 6 and be like, oh, he didn't really do a ton since 4. But if he did another 10 inches again, all of a sudden you have a deer that's 20 inches bigger. And if he was already 160 at 4 or something like that, you got a 180-inch deer.
Yeah.
For us, for whatever reason, it seems like they 170 is kind of just as big as ours get.
Oh, man.
And I'm not saying that,
Totally
there's
kidding.
anything wrong with that. We've had, but it just seems like our top tier deer have a hard time going over
170.
Yep. Which I guess we've had a few that Ralph would have been well over one. He'd even been in the 90s.
I've never even hunted a 170-inch deer, I don't think. I mean, like Ralph, I didn't. That he just showed up. But going past that,
You had Ralph and Bullwinkle.
yeah, I know, but I'm saying like they showed up not knowing that they were like we were just hunting, and they showed up. But like after that, later on in my hunting career, I don't think I've ever like been sitting there knowing of a 170-inch deer. Besides, last year would be the closest, and he's, as much as I'd love to say he's 172, I think he's going to be 169 or 172. So, I mean, he would be the biggest, which is still huge, but I really haven't even.
Well, and then you have like a Hammer, who's
that's
huge.
That right there is where I would say that you can add all the numbers you want. Mass will be the thing that will throw you off more than anything when it comes to scoring a deer or why a score shouldn't even matter. There can be so much antler there, and Hammer's the perfect example because he was a mainframe 8.
Yep.
And
freaking
everybody
beast.
that I know would want to kill him.
Oh yeah.
If any of you guys
saw and shoot him as a trophy deer.
Absolutely.
If you guys have seen our some of our posts we've done in the past years, the shed that was 4.5 pounds, wasn't it 4.7 or 4.5 or something like that?
Yeah, 4.5, I think.
4.5 pounds, one antler. That's Hammer's side.
And it's just a 4-point.
Yep,
clean,
just 4 points.
4-point antler.
No junk, nothing.
27-inch beam.
Actually, we had him on the podcast one time. Hammer.
Yeah, his sheds.
Yeah, Nick went and got him.
Yeah. Well, and the funny thing about it is the year before, what was it, 67? When I found his antler, the first time I found his shed, it was 67, and his eye guard was only like an inch or so.
Yeah.
And we didn't even know the deer was big until I found the antler.
No, because that's the year that Marty came, and I told Marty, you need to shoot that deer. If you see that deer on the hoof.
Yeah, but we thought he was a junk buck.
No, I thought he was just a big, heavy deer. I didn't know that he would score 160 something.
Yeah, we didn't think he was that big.
I just thought that it was one of the deer when you and Marty were up there that I said, if you see this deer, you're going to want to shoot it. I mean,
Who?
He'd have been right at 150.
Oh, I knew Hammer.
At the time, we didn't have a name for him. We didn't name him.
Yeah, we were sitting in that bottom for him.
Yes.
Yeah,
we just knew him as a big, heavy 8.
But I don't think even you knew that his base was 6.5 inches.
I didn't. I mean, I just knew that he was big.
Yeah. And then that deer just got
stupid.
Yeah. That's my favorite deer of all time, and probably the biggest, other than that one other that we had on that same place several years earlier. That deer was huge. Mm-hmm. He was probably 200, 190 to 200.
Huge.
Yeah.
So, but mass is that if I'm gonna manage deer, I want to manage for the deer that don't have mass. That's where because it doesn't seem like if they don't have it, they never get it. And KB again was one that I was like the difference between him and Cage, and we really believe that Cage and him were brothers. Mm-hmm. I mean, I really think those two fawns were born at the same time, and they grew up. And Cage had everything minus the extra points.
And the reason, why don't you explain why we believe so thoroughly that they were brothers?
Because every time that we saw them, they were together. Every time that they seemed to swap a certain characteristic of a dagger point coming out of the base of their forehead.
Well, when they were both 3. So when both of these deer were 3, yes, they were both in the probably 140, something like that, and they each perfectly in the center on the base of their antlers had probably a 4 to 5 inch sticker coming out on each side, and both of them had that exact same thing.
Yep.
It was weird.
And they were definitely the same age structure. You'd see them on a trail camera photo standing side by side. They were the same age. They were together a lot. We'd see summer pictures of them together. But one carried mass and was a mainframe 10. The other one was, like Warren said, he ended up being a mainframe 14, but he didn't have the mass. Cage was outscore KB eventually.
Yeah.
But we're pretty sure eventually he got killed.
Yeah.
Man, he was a pretty deer. And if you had stood them side by side, even though the other one has massive amount of points, the other one has massive amount of antler, I would shoot the lesser pointed one because in my opinion, he's a nicer deer.
Yep. Yeah. If a deer's got stupid mass, I don't care if he's got a tine over 2 inches. But I'd say stupid mass, though. I'm talking like he needs to be circumferences over 6.
I would have traded Hershey for the deer you ended up killing that year.
Which deer did I kill that year?
I don't know, but it would have been better than Hershey.
I don't know that.
I do.
Well, I've seen a deer that has a 9.5-inch spread and scores over 200 inches. Deer.
I'm good. I would have been all right with that.
He was like 130.
Yeah. Hershey is the most disgusting deer.
He's pushing 160.
He's not pushing. Well, he's big, but.
He hates on all his deer.
No, I don't. I love all my deer except for Hershey.
That 6-inch spread it.
I think it's 9.5 inches. 9.5-inch spread, and he scores over 200.
Wait. So each side is 95.
Yeah, it's freaking stupid mass. It's hanging on a guy's wall outside of Winterset, Iowa.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was killed many, many years ago, but I wish the guy would pull it out and let people.
Actually, even bigger than that.
It'd
have to be. They each got to be like 97 at a minimum.
It's huge. It was cool. It was one of the coolest deer I've ever laid eyes on.
Do I know this person?
No, I don't even know his name. We went to track a deer for. I took Dan to track a deer for someone, and they had permission to hunt from this guy. And so while we were hanging around the house, we wanted to give a little more time, get everything situated. He said, "Oh, you want to see the deer I killed a few years ago here?" And I walked in, and he said, "A few years ago. I think it was killed in the 50s or 60s."
That's a really big few years.
But he had it it was officially scored and everything, and I mean it's just huge.
Back when Roosevelt was still in office.
they still, one of these days you guys are going to realize that 2023 is a long time ago.
I'm just saying a few years, and then you said
no. That's what he said. This was killed a few years ago, and then we walk in there, and I'm like, yeah, that's a few years ago.
Okay, yeah, that's like 73 years ago.
Well, it took me by surprise too. But
how do you know it was in the 50s or 60s? Then?
It was all printed on. He had the plaque.
Oh, okay.
He had the like.
Okay.
It's all labeled there and tells you everything about it. Okay. Yeah, that was official. Yep. I mean, someone signed it and everything.
Yep.
So that's how.
Okay, I'm with you.
Yeah, it wasn't just him telling me.
Signed it, so it's official.
Well, I'm saying he had the paperwork to go with it.
I'm joking. I just thought that was funny. Okay.
Like I told you guys, anytime that you want to put in an application, if you want to deal with you can. There you go, Nick.
Let's wrap it up.
All right.
Where's the wacky fact?
I'm on it. You guys chat for a second.
He doesn't have one.
I'll be clear about Hershey. I am grateful for that deer, but I will say he's ugly. He's super ugly.
I think you're wrong.
Yeah. He's got he doesn't he doesn't have a tine over 7 inches. The coolest feature about him is the color of his antlers.
Which happen to be chocolate.
Hershey. Yeah, that's why we call him Hershey.
Chocolate. Hershey's chocolate.
Yeah, but it was the most impressive shot I've ever made on a deer, too.
You hit him.
I didn't hit him. I smoked that sumbuk.
Gotcha. All right. So we have definitively talked about antler size and scores, and 8 points aren't 8 points. But we're about ready to close this, but I think Warren has gotten his wacky fact ready.
I got it.
All right.
And I think that this may explain a lot of things. Your brain uses up around 20% of your body's blood and oxygen. I think your guys's is more like 7.5%. And that would explain why you guys have such a hard time following along.
No, not if I'm upside down.
Batman! I'm gonna get you a signal. Buckman.
Oh, that's a cool superhero name. We're gonna have to remember that for something this
Jackie
fall.
Bushman's gonna try and trademark it on you, so you better hurry up.
Yeah.
Buckman.
Oh yeah.
All right.
In.
Are we out? Is that it? That's all you were just gonna say. That's how much blood flow that the brain uses, and
yeah.
Okay, that was kind of piss poor, if you ask me. He kind of let us down on today's
that was one of your worst ones yet.
Yeah. So, but anyhow, we sure appreciate you guys tuning in, and we try to make this. I don't know how much of this is going to be cut, so you may only see 4 or 5 minutes of this because these guys went off on some tangents today that you just can't do, but we sure appreciate everyone tuning in. Thank you for the reviews, both the Spotify and the Apple guys that are doing it.
And the YouTuber dudes.
And the YouTube guys, man. The ones that are watching. So thank you guys for tuning in and for all the reviews. And from the Raised Hunting crew, we be out.
We be out.
Buckman out.